As more and more offices begin to welcome their employees back for work in the office, it's become difficult for 50% of our population. Consider this, that while employees now have to go back to work, some cases of course they have options, but in many they just have to go back to work, schools have not opened so far, nor have daycare centers, nor have creches, which is why a recent survey conducted by Avtar for the Economic Times has shown that 4 in 10 women are finding it difficult to go back to work because they have an issue with providing childcare. No creches or primary schools have opened in many parts of the country, and these employees who are also mothers are finding themselves stuck. This is showing in higher attrition rates for women compared to men post-pandemic, which is bad news in India, which anyway typically has lesser participation in the labor force from women. So what can we do about this, and are companies sensitive enough to give options to these women and to employees? Let's go across now to Dr. Saundarya Rajesh, founder and president of Avtar Group. On this, Sairee Chahal, founder and CEO of Sheroes, joins us for this conversation today, as does Rituparna Chakraborty, executive vice president and co-founder Teamlease. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for speaking with us today. Dr. Saundarya Rajesh, let me begin by getting you to outline some of the key findings from the survey. From what we saw, it seems that women are having a tough time to go back to work, and that, complete compromise, which always sees the woman taking the hit, is being seen once again.
Absolutely. You said it, Tamanna, and the fact is that women have always been at the vulnerable front lines of any economic disaster. They are the first ones to lose their jobs. They are the first ones to be displaced. They are the first ones to be out looking for opportunities to show that they still matter. And in this particular survey that we conducted for the Economic Times, it's not all bad news, though. I have to say that. While there are industries that have taken a big hit, and in those industries, the childcare responsibility is often just treated as the employee's issue and not the concern of the business. Yes, what we just spoke about right now is true. The attrition rates of the women are very high in some of these industries, but there are other industries which have a better history of having focused on women's workforce participation. And in these industries, you will find that the women's attrition is actually lower than that of the men. So I thought this would be my opening remarks for today, Tamanna.
Sure. The question, though, is that these industries where you're seeing that women are being retained, where companies are focusing on women in the workplace, what proportion of the total jobs out there do they stand for? And that then really becomes pertinent, because this is helping just few women. What about the rest? I want to bring in Rituparna Chakraborty over here for her comments on this phenomenon. Ritu, have you seen this trend where as people come back to work, women who found themselves taking on more and more responsibilities with work from home, remember, was a double blow for a lot of women who are working women. Do they find themselves now at the receiving end having to make tough choices?
Pandemic has been a bittersweet pill for women, if I may put it that way. Yes, right at the beginning, I think, when both the man or the woman of the house have been working with the work from home mechanism of doing work, where we did not have any support systems, our maids were gone, we did not have any help. Yes, we did see initially women taking the hard call of some of them dropping out of the workforce. And then subsequently now when we are getting back to office, but the other infrastructure of, like rightly pointed out, of school, of maids still not falling in place, it definitely puts women at a disadvantage. However, I think women per se, irrespective of the pandemic, have battled even more difficult times and situations. And the fact that there is some attrition, I mean, full empathy to such women, and I totally understand the difficulties that are being faced, but I do believe that a case has to be made for continuing with these women with such employers who kind of are not able to offer the flexibility. I mean, there are many situations where we are seeing that where both parents are working, 3 days a week, if you can opt for it. So 3 days, let's say the woman is actually going to work while the man stays back taking care of the children. And such ways, I think there is a possibility, and women who actually do not want to leave the workforce are looking at those possibilities. And finally, I think it's about employers also being much more aware about the fact that there is a case to be made for having women for the sake of diversity. Diversity is an important concern. As a matter of fact, I'm seeing the other trend where more and more employers are looking at hiring women because productivity, there are clear signs that productivity improvements are happening. The ability to diversify and get more talent into the organization. Many organizations are offering creative options around work from home. So yes, it's a difficult time for some women, but side by side, more opportunities I see as well opening up for women today. So it's not all horrid. Like Dr. just now mentioned, I think there is a silver lining here for women in spite of the challenges.
No, absolutely, because some jobs have become now location agnostic. They can hire many more women. But, I come back to my question, Sairee. How many women as a proportion of the workforce would find opportunities in jobs which are location agnostic, which are flexible in terms of coming into office, if they can't, and, have employers who are thinking about what they need?
Right. So I think what we are witnessing is clearly a mass transition. I think when I zoom out and look at India a little bit, clearly India hasn't witnessed the rate of job growth that it would need as a country in about a decade now. So the total pool of jobs has fundamentally not grown. But what has grown is entrepreneurial opportunities. So I think when we look at the lens of jobs or employment, clearly the non corporate opportunities continue to grow, and I think we're definitely seeing two trends. Women from small town India, where corporate opportunities are definitely fewer, coming online more and more, also a post-COVID response, and looking at both remote work as well as entrepreneurial opportunities as a real option. And if you ask me just in terms of sheer volumes or sheer trend lines, these are massive trend lines. They are at least 8 to 10 million women who are self-employed entrepreneurs, and that numbers will grow 3x, 4x in the next 3 to 4 years. But we're also seeing growth of remote opportunities, and that's in some way a boon. The unfortunate part is the absolute growth of jobs is still a hindrance. So and that will impact large numbers, women in leadership numbers, women in tech numbers. It will impact numbers that are very, very formidable. So we clearly can look at job growth only from a corporate perspective, but the truth is, at an absolute level, that's not growing in India, and we definitely need more of that. But broadly speaking, remote work has definitely opened more and more opportunities, especially from women in small town India who otherwise would never have those opportunities. And and the number of companies who are global, 100% remote in nature, is definitely 10x more than at the end of 2021 than it was at beginning of 2020. So again, a silver lining, as my co-panelist shared earlier. But I think from a women's perspective, we definitely need more. We need more big picture thinking. We need bigger brush strokes, and we need more macro policy work here.
Dr. Rajesh, give us some more details of what the survey says. So, for example, in FMCG companies, the rate of attrition in women is 7% more than men. It's 4% more in manufacturing. So, are there sectors which are seeing more women drop out relative to others?
Absolutely. So the what the survey actually said was that the overall delta in attrition of women post-COVID is about 1% more than that of men. So, that itself is a bit of a surprise in the sense that if you look at all the different industries, ITes, consulting, BFSI, FMCG, pharma, manufacturing, of course, hospitality, all of this, which, had different varied impacts as a result of COVID, the average attrition rate of women is only that much higher than that of men. But if you dig deeper and if you go at it industry wise, you will find, as you rightly said, FMCG has had a huge difference. For instance, the attrition rates of women in the FMCG sector are at about 23.9%, almost 24% attrition post COVID, while that of men was only 17%. Similarly, if you look at manufacturing, the attrition rate of women is at 6.55%, while that of men is at 3.36%. And by the way, this is an interesting number because it shows that manufacturing as an industry has not lost that much people. If you compare it with, for instance, ITes. And if you look at ITes, you will find that the attrition of men is at 28%, whereas that of women is at 29%. And what we must make of these numbers is that organizations and, of course, sectors which began their diversity journey, which means, which started giving flexibility, which started looking at ways in which they could encourage remote working, which employed technology to make sure that jobs could be performed remote or could be performed in a different way. Those industries were able to actually, make it. And it's not only a question of the industries, it's also the question of maybe certain stalwart organizations, even within industries which are technically supposed to be the tough industries, have also been able to maintain a good retention rate of women. So I think what it basically says is that those organizations, not only industries, even organizations which are, slow to pick up the whole diversity pace, which are slow to accept, things like enablements, like flexible working or remote working, even if they are in industries which lend themselves to better women's workforce participation, they have taken a hit. So this is what the data says.
At the bottom line here is not just an organization that needs to have diversity, so should have women on board. Look at it from the employee's point of view, from the women point of view. They are being cut out and not getting equal opportunities simply because the social structure is such that when it comes to a choice between the husband and the wife or the male and the female about who will go to work and who will stay back, in most cases it's naturally the woman who has to make that compromise. Rituparna, isn't that at the bottom of all of this the real question, the real problem which we need to sort if we need to increase and improve women participation in the labor force in any case?
Oh, I completely agree with you on that front. I guess this is not something to do with pandemic. This has been the crux of women opting out. I mean, the fact that India is a peculiar story where urban labor workforce participation of women is lower than rural India, itself speaks for itself. The reason it's been happening because between two working parents, I think, or just between couples, it's the woman who's opting out for various reasons. I mean, the reasons actually are ranging from safety concerns, commute time, being away, workplace being away from home. I think the number of reasons are quite a few. And I don't think that has changed with the pandemic. So if we have to tackle this problem, we have to not look at pandemic in isolation. I think India has some chronic challenges which are hindering women workforce participation, whether it's through legislation. And like Sairee just now rightly pointed out, I think we have to focus on increasing the overall quantum of formal jobs in the country for women to get an equal opportunity or even have a seat on the table where it matters. So I think some of the things which are interesting is that women's informal work participation is much more than formal workforce participation. Why is that the case? We have to also see that why is it that during the pandemic, we've noticed certain sectors, like, for example, e-commerce sectors, opened up hiring of women. Was that, I mean, I often ask this question, was that to improve diversity, or because at that point of time, given the circumstances, well, we had a crunch of resources and a lot of informal work was women in informal work got dislodged, and why not bring them into it? But I think there are some chronic challenges here. We have to do it. Social challenges is honestly beyond our pay grade. Social challenges in terms of why a husband needs to remain in the workforce, why the wife has to. I think at some level, I'm a big believer that women themselves need to change their thinking. And if women make up that mind and make up that choice, that no matter the circumstances,
I think it's important to talk about it. I think it's important to talk about it.
Yes,
I mean, I think it's important to talk about it. I mean, obviously, one discussion, one debate is not going to change the way many people think. But maybe even if one person watching this is thinking and saying that, hey, perhaps the status quo is not fair, and I should find a way out, and I have a right to employment as much as anyone else. I can't be, penalized just because of my gender, then maybe it helps. So that's why we do what we do. Sairee, I want to take this ahead from the point of view of the employers. Childcare and, who's going to take care of the family, from a cultural point of view, sometimes has been all about the women. But can employers help, or do they have a point when they say that, hey, I run a manufacturing unit, or the kind of work that I have just needs the person here for an 8-hour, 10-hour shift. If they can't come, too bad. So is there a way around this?
Well, they say where there is a will, there is a way. So there's definitely a way around it. We need more willpower. Look, I think the law still provides for these provisions, daycares, maternity leave, safety of women in the workspace. I think a lot of this challenge is still putting it on the P&L table, being able to say we are willing to make that investment, we are willing to make that shift. And the truth is, I know manufacturing is one sector, but more and more work is really knowledge-based work. It's service sector work. And we are seeing this massive digital adoption in every industry. In fact, the industries that are massively being disrupted are the ones that are not adopting this. So if a company is already walking into the future, they're already thinking about building products for tomorrow. They're already thinking of serving customers who are millennials or younger or Gen Z, then there is a very real need for these companies to really introspect of what is it that their culture and policy puts out, not only for their employer brand, but also for their consumer brand or for their business brand. And I think these are significant questions, and we will see the divide between companies that are conscious about this versus companies that are hiding from this. We will see this divide. We're already seeing this divide. And ultimately, it is going to affect P&Ls. And the reason that will happen is because the talent divide will continue to grow. Smart people who have opportunities will continue to lean to work with companies that are very cognizant about these behaviors. So it doesn't matter whether they're manufacturing companies or the service sector companies or the product companies. The truth is, all businesses operate in their context. And this is very, very critical to responding to the context in which any business operates in. There is no way that any company out there can go out and say, hey, I'm not going to be cognizant of, 50% of my population. I'm not going to be cognizant of putting families first and putting all sorts of families first, and not just man, woman, child families, but also different gender families and pet families. And I think we are going to need a lot more of this leadership. Definitely, some companies are displaying it, but a lot of companies are going to need to catch up.
So a lot of companies need to come up to the table, especially right now post pandemic. It's a good opportunity to shake those old ways of doing business. And while we're talking here in the context of women coming back into the workforce, the fact is that more and more people, men, women, or of any gender really, are choosing their space over their work hours. So the work-life balance is getting tilted. People are preferring to work in remote locations. The demand for jobs from remote locations are increasing more and more. It's something that companies cannot ignore forever. Well, thank you to all of you for joining us on this very important discussion today.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.